الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة والتسليم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم المصطفى الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما والحمد لله على كل حال. So, when Abdullah contacted me about this, he told me he wanted me to speak to you guys about computer science. I said, Abdullah, I don't think they're going to be interested in that, man. No, I'm joking. But in actuality, what I wanted to do is, this is kind of what I've been talking about, like kind of during Ramadan and also after Ramadan to different communities. And it's just really about how to change, right? Inshallah, this is going to be a talk about how to change habits, okay? And inshallah, you'll see that it's, inshallah, I'm going to try to give some tips and stuff like that from our tradition, from the Islamic tradition, but also from the psycho-spiritual, from the psychological lens, because I am a therapist by profession, all right? So most of the time when people come and talk to me, it's always about change. Like, how do we change? How do we change our relationship? How do we change? How do I change so that I can meet goals? How do I? And so this is just, I'm going to summarize, like, how do you change? And this is a very, very important talk because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah, He tells us this. He says, Allah does not change the condition of people until they change what is in their own selves. This is the sunnah of Allah. This is a spiritual principle that no one escapes. When you look at your situation and you say, oh, how did I get here? You have to say, what am I responsible for? And then as you begin to change that, then you'll find the support of Allah will come. But Allah, He has declared, He does not change people's condition. Either way, this goes either way. If you have a good situation, He doesn't change it to bad until you do something. And when you have a bad situation, He doesn't change it to good until you do something. So sometimes it's about our health. Sometimes it's about our wealth. Sometimes it's about our relationships. Sometimes it's about change, like meeting certain goals. But life is all about change. I mean, the whole purpose of sending a messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was to help people change. Change. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to the Arabs and he told them, no, you have to change, they wanted to kill him because of that. So, change is hard. Sometimes at the individual level, sometimes at the family level, sometimes at the communal level, change is difficult. So what are those steps? Abu Dar al-Ghifari, one of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a hadith that's narrated by Ibn Asakir and Imam Jalaluddin al-Suyuti, he said that he went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the suhuf of Ibrahim, Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. The suhuf is mentioned in Surah Al-A'la, the end of Surah Al-A'la, Suhuf Ibrahim wa Musa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about like this revelation is similar to what came to Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then he mentions in Surah Al-A'la, where, what suhuf. So Abu Dar said, what is, tell me what was in the suhuf of Nabi Ibrahim. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him a long description. But for the purposes of our talk, I just want to mention one thing. In the suhuf, in these scrolls, suhuf means scrolls, right? So if you can imagine, two, if a long piece of paper and it's rolled up on both ends until it becomes like two, and then you unroll it like this and there's writing inside. But it says inside of there that the intelligent person, as long as he has not lost his intelligence, must have insight into his epoch. He must understand his time. What is the time that you're living in? And then he begins to occupy himself with his affair. So in other words, don't move out and trying to change the world, trying to change everything about your children or maybe even yourself until you understand the time. This is very important, especially if you're a parent. Understand the time that you're living in. So I'm going to ask you, what time are we living in? What would you say? What would you say the time is that we're living in? What would you say? The time of technology, phones. But what does it lead to? Distractions, that's one. What else? Laziness.
Immediacy.
Yes. Right? Immediate. Right? Instant gratification. That's the time we're living in. If I had to characterize it like in one statement, I would say that's the time that we're living in. Instant gratification. And even if you're not somebody who's impulsive, doesn't matter. We all use our phones and our computers to order pizza. We all do. Or to order food, or to order movies, or to order Amazon. And we expect to have it right like today. I want it today or no later than tomorrow. If it's later than tomorrow, we're gonna be, where's my stuff? Give me my money back. This has never happened before. This has never happened in humanity. Never. Where you can order something that comes from as far as China and you have it in 2 days. It has never happened. It has never happened. You know what I mean? That you could look at a device. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he predicted it, no doubt. He predicted it. But it has never happened where we can have everything that we want immediately. And what you have to understand is that this does something to your nature. It does. Instant gratification. A person who's used to getting everything right here, right now, what that leads to is excessive appetites. Excessive appetites leads to addiction. This is how it happens. Instant gratification. You become used to instant gratification. The nafs, the lower self, begins to expand, but in a dysfunctional way. In a dysfunctional way. And so it begins used to the impulse of self. It wants it, it wants it, it wants it, until the person becomes addicted. They become addicted to that thing that they love, that they want, that they treasure. All right? So if we want to renew ourselves, right? If we want to get a hold of ourselves, then we have to inculcate new habits. We have to think about it deeply. What is it that I need to do in the time that I'm living in, right? So you start off with the time that you're living in. What's the time I'm living in? Okay, how do I not fall victim to this time? Because the corporations are after your heart. The corporations, they know that if they can plant the desires now, they have a customer for life. Whatever is in the heart, the wallet follows. They know this because they pay psychologists large amounts of money on how they can capture the hearts of the youth. It gives them a customer for life. They know that, as Abdullah said, that we're distracted. They know this. They understand this. So what do they have to do to get just a piece of your attention? So the first thing that I would say, and this is where I always start with my clients when they say that they want to change something. And these are the 3 C's. All right, we're going to go through 3 C's. I just looked at the time and I only have 30 minutes, so I got to speed up a little bit. All right, 3 C's. The first one, conscientiousness. Or you can say Muhasabah. Right, looking at the self and taking the self to account. Conscientiousness. This is the first C. The second C, commitment. Or you can say Niyyah. Niyyah. The third C is going to be consistency. Adwamuha, like Rasulullah SAW said in the hadith. That thing that you do over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, consistency. All right? So let's start with conscientiousness. Conscientiousness. No one can, if a person does not give thought to their state, if they don't give thought to, okay, where am I at now? How did I get here? And where do I want to be? Change is not going to happen. All right? And this is why the early Muslims, they used to say, Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu. The early Muslims used to say, whoever knows their self, man arafa, to have a deep knowledge of himself first, faqad arafa rabbahu. Then he can go on to know his Lord. If you don't know yourself, if you don't have a deep understanding of your shortcomings, what actually motivates you, what's because sometimes we'll say, oh, I'm doing this for Allah's sake, or I'm doing this, we will garb our dysfunction in religious language sometimes. All right, we'll do that. So what it means is that this person doesn't really know what's motivating them. Really, it might be their trauma. It might be things that they experienced in their past. That's actually what's motivating them. But they'll cloak it in religious language. We call that spiritual bypassing. When a person says, for example, I'll give you an example like this. If a person is maybe lazy, or a person is not willing to commit to like finding work or something like that. So what they'll say is, they'll say, yeah, it's hard out here, man. I haven't been able to find a job. But they really weren't working. But then they'll put in front of it, I'm just going to rely upon Allah. This is spiritual bypassing. You're trying to bypass the work that you're supposed to do, and you're putting it in spiritual garb. That's spiritual bypassing. If you don't know this about yourself, if you don't know what your spiritual bypassing is, if you don't know what your impulsive self calls to, if you don't know what your bad habits are, you're not going to be able to change it. That's one of the things that we say as therapists. If you can't name it, you can't change it. If you don't know what you're struggling with, you'll never be able to change it. And so that's why the early Muslims, they had this concept of first know yourself deeply. Know yourself. Remove those obstacles, remove those veils that are between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you can go on to, know Allah. All right? Because you've dealt with those thorns in your own soul. You've dealt with them. And Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an, very famous statement, he used to always say, Hasibu qabla an tahasabu. Take yourself to account. Always look at yourself before the account is taken of you. Meaning it's coming. Everybody's going to answer for what they did or did not do. And so what is it that you didn't do? What is it that you need to do? What is it that you should improve in? How do you actualize your spiritual potential? Okay? Know your default settings. Know your default. This is very, very important, ya ibadullah. Ya ibadullah. This is very, very important. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us in the Quran that He created the soul a certain way. Alright? He says, Wa nafsin wa ma sawaha. The soul and how it has been, it has its taswiyah, the way it has been formed. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. It has been inspired to know. He's given us deep insight into ourselves. The soul, it knows what is right and what is wrong. It knows. So Allah's telling us, okay, this is the default setting of the self. And then He goes on to say, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. He is most successful. The one who does what? He purifies his soul. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. He's ruined if he leaves it like it is. So these phones, these computers, they come on default. Right? They come with the settings of the manufacturer. And if you want it to work for you a certain way, you have to change those settings. You have to fix those settings. The human being is the same way. He comes with his anger on a certain setting. He comes with his passionate self on a certain setting. He comes with his desires on a certain setting. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if you don't fix that, if you don't change it the way it's supposed to be changed, وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. He's ruined if he leaves it like that. Okay? So this is very, very important. So know your default settings. Know those things about yourself. Are you petty? Are you petty? Right? Are you, it's hard for you to take yourself to account? Or when somebody tries to take you to account, it's hard for you? Are you vain? Vanity, ujub. Ujub is like when you look in the mirror and you're like, yeah, I'm the one. Right? That's ujub. You are amazed with yourself. This is vanity. Because that's not what Rasulullah ﷺ used to do when he looked in the mirror. And he used to look in the mirror and he used to say, Kama hasanta khalqi fahassin khuluqi. As you have made my outward beautiful, make my inward beautiful. Make my character beautiful. That's what he used to say. All right? Know your appetites. We all have appetites. And I'm not just talking about the eating appetite. Every organ in your body has an appetite. Your eyes wants to look at certain things. Your ears wants to listen to certain things. Sometimes it's backbiting. Sometimes it's you want to hear what happened to your enemy. You want to hear it. Tell me more. Right? The ears, they want, right? The tongue, it has appetites. It wants to talk. It wants to get its thing off. All right? The stomach has its appetites. Private parts has its appetites. The hands has its appetites. The body has its appetites. The type of clothing we like to wear. Every part of the body has its appetites. What are your appetites that need to be restrained? What are your appetites? Okay? If you don't do this muhasabah, if you don't do it, then what will happen is Shaitan will come to you in the form of reason and justify you're not taking yourself to account. So you have the bodily appetites. We can just for the sake of argument, we call that nafs, the nafs, all the bodily appetites. If you don't take that to account, then when Shaitan comes to you, he's going to come to you through hawa. Hawa, your worldview, the way you see things. And he's going to justify it. Everything will be justified. He will actually use your ability to reason to justify you leaving yourself on the default settings. So when a person is doing this muhasabah, they have to look at their bodily appetites. They also have to look at their mental, this propensity to not see reality the way it is. And the example that I always like to use, because we live in America and we have a problem with this in America, is racism. If you look at another person and you think that you are better than them because of the color of your skin, the country that you come from, the language that you speak, if you think that you're better than them or worse than someone, this is hawa. You don't see things correctly. There's something wrong with your worldview. You don't see things through reality. And Allah is al-haq. We want to understand things the way Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam have explained things to us. And about that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah, they have the ones who have taqwa. So if you see skin color, if skin color is a problem with you, this is how you're not seeing things correctly. All right? So this is why you have to do muhasabah. You have to look at yourself honestly and say, where am I at? What is it that I need to work on? So this is the first C. And it takes a lot of work. I mean, I'm shortening it for the purpose of this talk, but it takes a lot of work. And many times, you need someone outside of yourself to point those things out in you. This is one of the reasons why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Al-mu'minu mir'atu mu'min." The believer is a mirror for his brother, right? You know, for the believer is a mirror for the believer. What do you do in the mirror? You look in the mirror and you say, "Oh, I need to fix this. I need to fix that." So when you look at your brother, you see that he has a better state, his iman is stronger, he has more taqwa, then you look at him and you say, "I need to fix this." I need to change. The same way you look in the mirror. You look in the mirror, you say, oh. You look at your teeth. You look at this. You look at this. You look at this. Right? That's what you're supposed to do. You look at those who have higher iman, they have more taqwa, they have it, and then you begin working on yourself. Okay? This is one of the reasons why. Rasulullah ﷺ said, Al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min. The believer is a mirror for the believer. It's hard work. After you've kind of done that, you're going to find a lot of things. If you're honest with yourself, you're going to find a lot of things there. You're going to find a lot of things that are wrong. If you're honest with yourself, you're going to find a lot of things wrong. Just pick one that you're going to change, the main one. Look out 5 years, just project out 5 years and say, if I don't change this, I'm going to be a monster in 5 years. I'm going to be so much worse off in 5 years. That's what you have to do. You go out, just project out 5 years. If I keep doing this thing right here, if I keep overeating, if I keep fighting with my children, if I keep fighting with my spouse, if I keep, whatever that thing is, project out 5 years where you'll be. And then when you see that this is the one that you really, really need to change, then now we're going to move to the next step, which is that now you got to commit to change. And that's difficult too. Muhasabah is difficult. To look in the mirror and look at the self is very difficult. All right? When you realize that you need to change something, just do your istighfar. Say astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah, ya Rabb ighfirli. Oh, Allah forgive me. All right? Because that thing, I guarantee you, is a veil between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I guarantee you. All right? If you know that you need to change something and you haven't changed it, for sure it's a veil between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right? Now let's talk about Niyyah. Niyyah. The commitment. You know, like you hear a lot of imams, we say this when we're on the minbar. We talk about, like innamal a'malu bin niyyat. Rasulullah ﷺ said that actions are according to their intentions. In other words, what did you intend? I think a more important question is how do you intend? How do you get to the point to where you can actually intend something? And niyyah, it has to be pure. It has to be pure. And you start off knowing that, again, Allah, He doesn't change the person's condition. He won't. This is His sunnah. This is His promise. If you are not willing to put in the work, you're not going to get divine assistance if you're not willing to put in the work. Inna Allah la yughayyiru. I didn't say it. Don't get mad at me. Allah said it. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah said it. You want the divine assistance to change? You have to be willing to commit. And then there's all these promises from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That if you, like, Ya ibadi alladhina asrafu ala anfusihim, like all my servants who have transgressed against their own selves, don't despair of the mercy of Allah. Like He's telling you, it doesn't matter how bad your state is. It doesn't matter how long you've been messing up. Don't think that His mercy is not near. No. But you got to do something. His mercy is right there. But you have to put in the work first. Just decide the person that you want to be. Who is it that you actually want to be? And then you begin to prove it to yourself with small wins. It doesn't have to be a huge thing overnight. A small win. Small. When they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they say, Ya Rasulullah, what is the most beloved thing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like, what's the most beloved deed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he said, it is that thing that you do over and over and over again. Walau qalla, even if it is small. The tiny thing. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next C. Right now we're in commitment. We started with what? Conscientiousness, mashallah. And how do we say it in Arabic? Muhasabah. Right? Now we're talking about niyyah, or now you have to commit. Okay? You have to commit. Each and every one of our actions is a vote towards something. Every action we take, it's a vote. We're casting a lot towards something. Everything we do. So you can't say, oh, I want to change my eating habits, and you don't do anything about it, right? Like we keep going to the same restaurants, we keep going to the same Or, I want to lower my cholesterol. I want to lower my cholesterol. But we keep eating the same food. Right? We go to the doctor every month, like, oh my, it didn't go down? You know it didn't go down because you didn't do nothing to make it go down. Right? So when you make your niyyah, you make a firm intention. And sometimes a niyyah, don't think it, many times the niyyah doesn't happen like this. If you go and you look at some of the statements of Hassan al-Basri, or you look at some of the statements of, some of these early imams that were known for their piety. Like the woman, she brought her son, who used to like a lot of sweets. Her son used to like a lot of sweets. And so she brought him to, I can't remember the imam, but it was one of the famous imams. And she said, please give him wa'ith, give him a stern warning about eating sweets. And so he said, come back next week. So she came back next week. And then he said, come back the following week. She came back the following week. He said, come back in one more week. 3 weeks. On the fourth week, she said, admonish him. So then he begins to give him an admonishment. Like, you really have to give up sweets. It's not good for you. It causes this, it causes that, it causes this. So she says, why didn't you just say that to him the first time I came? And he said, because I myself was struggling with that. And I had to give the admonition to myself first before I gave it to your son. That's niyyah. Oh, we have any college students in here right now? College students. Who's in college right now? You will be. You're on vacation right now. Who's in college right now? College students. I see one back there. Okay, I see two back there. One's hiding. Okay, mashallah. How many colleges did you apply to when you applied to go to your university? Or how many are you going to apply to? How many? I can't see it. Five, right? Who's graduated already? How many colleges did you apply to when you applied? 5. He applied to 5. How many did you apply to? 10. He applied to 10. We have a champion. Right? That, ladies and gentlemen, is niyyah. That's niyyah. You decided something. You said, I want to go to a good university. What do I have to do to make sure that I get accepted by at least one good one? I'm going to apply to 5 to 10 universities, and inshallah, one of them will catch. You see? You already thought about, okay, let's talk about what's not being said. You already knew, I'm going to apply to 1. They might say no. I might apply to 2. They might both say no. I'm going to apply to 3. All 3 of them might say no. But I have a better chance if I apply to 5. That's niyyah. That's a pure example of making a commitment to something and then following it through. And no matter what the outcome is, you're committed. That's how it looks. Religiously, it has to look the same way. When you decide to change, you have to already have looked at yourself and you say, this is going to happen. I'm going to start on this diet, and then I'm going to see those Twinkies, I'm going to see those little Debbies, and I'm just going to just lose it. And I'm going to want to quit my diet. Okay, what's plan B? And what's plan C? And what's plan D? You did it with the university. You have to do the same thing when you're talking about improving yourself. Same. All right? So I wanted to give you that dunyawi example so that you can understand it psychologically or spiritually. You have to do the same exact thing. And I can give you many examples of that. Like once they came to Hassan al-Basri, and I'm mentioning him because both of his parents were companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Both of his parents. So he's very early Muslim. He became an imam in the deen. Like he was a master of Islam, right? And once they came and they asked him, I just can't remember right now exactly what the engagement was, but they were asking him, I think they were asking him about going to a janazah. They were asking him about going to a janazah. When somebody asks you to go to a janazah, you're just like, yeah, I'm going to go. But when they asked Hassan al-Basri to go to a janazah, and he didn't answer right away, and they asked him, like, what, like, are you going or not? And he said, I have not made the niyyah for it yet. In other words, he was giving deep thought about like, am I going because the other people are going? Or am I going because I truly, truly want the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he's looking deeply into his soul to say, like, what are my motivations? What am I like really after? Because if you do it because your friend says to do it, and you didn't really intend that you were going to do it because you wanted it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't go looking for that on the Day of Judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about this. Allah tells us on the Day of Judgment, people will come to him and he'll say, you know, like this, he'll say the scholar, the first one that's mentioned in the hadith is the scholar who comes and says, you know, Ya Allah, I learned for your sake. And Allah will say, liar, liar. This is somebody who spent their life learning and teaching. And he'll say, Ya Allah, I did it for your sake. Allah will say, liar, you did it so that people would say you were learned. They said it. In other words, you got your reward already. Don't come here asking for no favors. Your niyyah wasn't correct. So niyyah is so important. It is so important. And when you read, you know, like the different books, Ibn al-Jawzi, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, Imam Ghazali, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, you know, like these people that give us deep insight into our souls, they tell us like niyyah is like spend time learning how to work through your intentions. Spend time doing that. All right? So the first one, conscientiousness or muhasabah. The second one, commitment. When you commit to something, you know, like you should try to, like when you want to improve yourself, you want to change yourself, like lillah. You want the help of Allah? Do it for Allah's sake. Ya Allah, I want to improve myself so that, you know, I can draw nearer to you. It's a good deed that you will accept. Something like that. And then beg Allah. Like once you're firm, once you have committed to it, beg Allah. Say, oh Allah, I have intended this thing. Help me with it. Guide me to the best ways. Guide me to the best ways. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has promised that He will help you. In this verse, when He says, الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا, those who they are doing jihad of themselves for us. لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا, we will guide them to our subulana, our ways. We will guide them to the means to accomplishing that thing. So when a person has decided, oh, I'm going to struggle against myself, you know, like lillah, for Allah's sake, Allah Himself will guide you. Allah, He will show you how to go about conquering that thing in yourself. That's the promise of Allah. In one verse, He's saying, I don't change people until they change themselves. In this other verse, He's saying, but if you strive, right? If you struggle for our sake against yourself, we will show you how to do it. This is, you see, He's telling you His sunnah on both sides. You don't want to do no work? All right, stay like that. You want to do some work? You're going to get divine help. You're going to get divine help. Okay, lastly, be consistent. And like I said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us that that's the thing that Allah He loves the most. The thing that Allah loves the most is that you do a good deed and you do it consistently. Do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. وَلَوْ قَلَّ. Now, has anybody read that book, Atomic Habits? Atomic Habits. This book is amazing, all right? Because he calls it Atomic Habits because he's just telling you, start small. They're atomic. You know, at an atomic level, you know, it's even smaller than molecular. Right? It's little small things that you do, and then they build up and they build up and they build up and they build up, and then that's how a person conquers themselves. That's how they change. That's how they actually change. Really, really good book. But I want to give you an example out of this book. He talks about the British Olympic team, and I can't remember which year. I want to say it was in the 60s. The British Olympic team, the bicycling team, they were the worst team in the Olympics when it came to bicycling. The worst. They would always come in last, second to last. always the worst time. Finally, they got a coach who said, okay, we are going to simply change what we do 1% a day. That's it. 1% a day. All right? So just think about this. They have to look at how much their clothing is aerodynamic. Is the bike aerodynamic? The weight of the bike, the weight of the wheels on the bike, the food that they're eating, the muscle training that they're doing, everything that has to do with bicycling, they want to change. They pick one thing to work on, and over 4 years, because that's the cycle, 4 years before the next Olympic comes, and they worked on changing one thing 1% a day. And through this method, they became the best bicycling team for a decade when they did that. They went from being the worst to the best by changing 1% a day. And what James Clears explains is that if you do this with anything, pick anything, you change 1% a day over a year, you would have improved 40%. 40%. The opposite is also true. If you don't strive to improve in whatever that thing is that you're trying to do, eventually over a year you decline to zero. It's up to us. So either you're going to improve 1% a day. So let's look at it from a Muslim's perspective. And I have 5 minutes. From a Muslim's perspective, say you're doing istighfar, astaghfirullah. You do astaghfirullah. Does anybody know how many Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, how many he used to do? A day. 10,000 istighfar before he went to bed. 10,000 Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. That's what he used to do. 10,000. And in the hadith, not in the hadith, but it's an athar, right? If it's coming from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's called hadith. But if it's coming from the companions, it's called, athar. It's a report, but it doesn't go back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right? So in this athar, which is recorded, it's recorded by different transmitters. It says that he tied a string. He took a string, and he tied, I want to say, 100 knots or 1,000 knots in that string, and he wouldn't, he would do every night. He would do 10,000. Now, let's say that this is what a person's goal is. They want to get up to 10,000, and right now they're doing 100 a day. For a lot of us, this would be like, MashaAllah, what do? You do 100 istighfar a day, right? But say you want to get up to 10,000. You just do one extra a day. That's it. You're doing 100 right now. You do 101 today. You do 101, do 102 tomorrow. 103. Like you keep increasing 1%. And then see how many over a year you have. Because the nafs, the lower self, the impulsive self, the evil commanding self is going to try to take you to extremes. On one extreme, it's going to want you to do so little that it don't even matter. You did how many push-ups today? Junaid, how many push-ups did you do today? Right? So if you do 3 push-ups, doesn't matter. The muscles are not going to grow from 3 push-ups. It's not. And it's also going to say, your nafs is also going to say, oh, well, today we're going to do 100 push-ups. But you haven't done any push-ups in 5 years. So it's going to try to get you to do so little that it doesn't matter, or so many that you just give it up. That's from the nafs. And that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us, Allah loves that thing that you do. It's small, but it's consistent. It's consistent. That's what Allah wants from us. I mean, why do we pray 5 times a day? Every day. Allah wants consistency. That's how you grow. That's how you conquer the self. Slow, but constant. Slow, but constant. All right? So in the Quran, and I'm going to end right here. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tells us about the Khalifatul Ard. Right? Like he told the angels that he was going to place on earth a Khalifa. A representative. Someone who establish order first in himself, and then that would spread out. So our ulama tell us that not every human being is Khalifatul Ard. Don't think that, right? Is Allah's representative on earth. The first thing that you have to do is you have to learn how to govern yourself. You have to govern yourself. Then you can govern others, right? You can be a boss. You can be an imam or something like that. Once you've learned how to govern yourself, then you can govern the world. Then you can be Khalifatul Ard. When the Muslims, and I'll end here, when the Muslims had leaders like the Khulafa al-Rashidun, the four rightly guided caliphs, and then those pious caliphs that we had after them, like Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and then even as more recent, like some of the righteous ones from amongst the Sultan of the Uthmani, the Ottoman Empire. Many of them were pious. And what you'll see is that piety allowed them to go on and on and on and conquer. They conquered themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them authority, and they were established. They became khulafa fil ard. They became Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's representative on the earth. That's how it works. But we have to master ourselves. And of course, I started off talking about the time that we're living in. So this is what you have to be aware of. We're going to get caught up in some of these tricks and spending too much time on the phones. And, there's a way of using the phone where it's beneficial, and there's a way of using the phone where it's detrimental. The choice is ours. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.